Sometimes leadership isn't about eliminating fear. It's about learning how to move forward, even if fear is sitting right next to you. I'm Navira Walkowitz, class of 99. Long Blue Leadership starts now. Today's guest is Mitch Torrel, 2014 graduate of our Air Force Academy, former Division I hockey player, Air Force Special Tactics Officer, also an entrepreneur, and you're the founder of Century Operations. You've had a unique career. In fact, many probably know a lot of your work when it comes to an international rescue event, and we'll talk about that later on. But I think what's most exciting about this time with you, Mitch, is how you've continued to lead, but you've done it through what some would call overcoming fear, or maybe leading through fear. And so I think we're going to have a fantastic conversation today, and I welcome you to Long Blue Leadership.
Naviera, I appreciate you for having me out. I'm humbled to get the opportunity to kind of share some stories today, and so I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Well, thanks for the time. And we're going to jump right in with the time that we know when we had a chance to talk, Mitch. It was something that kind of surprised me, and I think others will really appreciate this. When you were going through your Air Force Special Tactics training to kind of be in that role, you experienced like night sweats and literally having to change your clothes at night. And I'm looking across from you. You're not sweating right now. You're looking pretty cool and calm. And so take me back to that experience, and let's just start there.
Pipeline is a pretty arduous process. It's 2 years. Every day is a grind. It's difficult. You're not really sure what tomorrow holds, and they keep it that way, pretty close hold. You don't know what you've got tomorrow. You just know it's going to be an early rise, and it's going to be really physically taxing. It's going to be mentally demanding, and you're not sure if. I think part of the anxiety is, do I mentally have what it takes to withstand and withhold another day? Do I physically have what it takes to continue to drive on? And I think that the unknown on what's to come, am I going to be enough? The 2 years is a selection process, and so you're getting assessed and selected every day.
Wow.
And it's a lot of anxiety to take on because you're not sure how you're going to perform. I think a lot of us have such internal pressures on ourselves to perform in and out every day that it makes it very difficult to get out of your mind and not worry about the anxiety of what's coming tomorrow.
Wow. Well, it makes me think the closest thing that I can think of right at this moment is, basic cadet training, which is 6 weeks. And you just talked about 2 years of uncertainty and not, waking up early and not knowing what's next. How did you kind of navigate through that? I think we all know how we navigated through BCT, but I think certainly this is much when it's something that's so enduring. I think that's a different situation.
I think a part of it goes back to just trusting in your preparation. Mm-hmm. Did I do what it took to prepare? And if you didn't, there's not much you can change the night before. And so trusting in your abilities, your ability to adapt, your ability to withstand. I think I hated the water, and they always told you going through the pipeline, if you don't love the water, you're not going to make it through. And I'm a testament to, I hated the water every day, dreaded it almost on a daily basis, but, learned to overcome and deal with that anxiety and just pressure that it brought. But every day is an opportunity to kind of build that wall up, your ability to withstand, your ability to deal with anxiety, your ability to deal with the unknown. And I think the pipeline was a really good opportunity for me to kind of grow. I remember when we were in Mississippi, one of the earlier schools is 3 months. Every day was, again, very arduous. You didn't know what was coming. Are they going to put us in the pool tomorrow? Am I going to drown?
Right.
Am I going to be able to make it through? Am I going to do a good job of leading the team? I think being able to focus on the team allowed me to not worry about myself and kind of focus on something else. And I think worrying about others allowed me to really make it through some of those arduous times. And that was very helpful to me. I remember I probably took a lot longer to grow to the point where, you're not worrying about tomorrow. I used to have to wake up at night, change my sheets, change what I was wearing, and that happened every night because I would just wake up in a dead sweat and I was soaking wet. And eventually, through exposure and through time, you learn to just exist and not worry about what's coming tomorrow. And it's a constant evolution. That's not to say I don't get anxiety about things that are happening tomorrow today, but you start to learn to head off those thoughts early on and allow yourself to just take what comes tomorrow.
So I'm thinking about you being in those moments and when you said it was probably later on, I'm curious as how, you're every night, you're changing your sheets, you're going through that. But I'm curious, were there others that were experiencing the same thing, or were others even helping you through navigating those thoughts that you had?
I think just being in a team environment makes things so much better.
Yes.
Sharing in the suffering, sharing in
Yes.
the stories, and getting to reflect on that. When I look back on the pipeline, what an amazing time, and something that I think our entire team looks fondly about. We're very close still, and I think that shared hardship, that shared experience is something that bonds you together for life.
So that 2-year journey, and obviously you graduated and became an Air Force Special Tactics Officer. What was, I guess, the moment that it clicked for you? You said you got to that point. Do you remember that day? Do you remember what it was different, or you just all of a sudden didn't sweat the same?
I think it probably lasted for me longer than a lot of people. And, it seems like I learned a lot of the lessons hard myself, and, but I think it's just something that gradually over time, the way I remember it is one day it stopped, but I'm sure it was a little bit more gradual than that.
Right.
I think over time you just learn to just, hey, tomorrow's going to be no different than it was today.
Mm-hmm.
Today was fine. We made it through. The team did great. I performed up to my standard, or maybe if I didn't, tomorrow's another opportunity in which I can go back and get after it again. And there's plenty of times where I look back, and I think it's easy to learn and grow when you're being put in those situations each and every day. And so it was a very growth oriented couple of years for me, and I really enjoyed it.
I would have loved to have been working with you on the day after you didn't have to wake up to change your sheets. I wonder if you had, you were more alert that day. You actually had better sleep. No.
Right.
Yeah. That's funny.
I think definitely had to drink a substantially less amount of water each night before going to bed. But yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's talk about, I think, there was something that you shared before about kind of uncovering in yourself that you had more in your tank than you thought. And I'm curious if that was during pipeline and those moments that were like, forced experiences, or if you found that at other times when you kind of surprised yourself in learning that about you.
I think the entire 10 years was a constant lesson of you've got more in the tank, both physically and mentally. I think when I first decided, hey, I was going through pilot training, and I just felt like it was more of a hobby than a job. And I got to meet guys in special operations and was very impressed by the camaraderie, by the caliber of guys that were there. And to me, it was like a hockey team. And I missed that. I missed that group.
Because you'd wanted to be a pilot first, correct? Is that what your plan was?
Yeah, I think my family wanted me to be a pilot.
Okay.
I think they kind of pushed me that direction.
Yes.
I always enjoyed flight, but for me, I just thought that some of my skills and abilities would better translate, and I would have a more fulfilling career getting to be around, that type of environment. And I think too, there's always, can I make it through the training? Do I have what it takes? What will I learn about myself? And so that was a little bit of kind of just the unknown was alluring, but I think there's just so much every day where I remember one of the first selection events, you do a long ruck event, and leading up to training, I was so focused on passing the initial fitness test to just start the assessment that I didn't ruck. I didn't do underwater stuff. I was just focused on, can I do push-ups? Can I do pull-ups? Can I do the 3 mile run?
Yes.
And that took all of my time and energy. And when I got to the ruck, it's unknown time, unknown distance, and they just tell you to go. And I remember I was like, all right, I'm going to treat this like a workout, and I'm going to run for a couple minutes, and then I'll walk for a few minutes, and then I'll run for a couple minutes, and that'll help get me through. And I remember Master Sergeant came up to me, and he's like, why are you walking? And
wow.
I remember being embarrassed at that moment where do I not have it in the tank where I could have just been running this whole time? Do I want it enough where I can just dig a little bit deeper and showcase that? And I remember that fed me through the next 2 years where it's like, do I have the mental hardness? Do I have the toughness? Have I prepared physically, for these events? And so I think that was kind of a good wake up call where it's not a workout, what do you have left in the tank? And I think throughout 2 years there, went through another selection halfway through my career, and that was another opportunity to kind of dig into the tank a little bit. And it was.
Did you approach that one differently?
I did, and very proud of what I had learned throughout the years, what I was able to showcase. We did a much longer Ruck event, and I ran the whole thing, and was pretty proud of myself about that.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
What a fantastic example, because I'm thinking about, in our work, in our profession, we think about how can I create something to be sustained, right? How can I do something for the long haul? But you're right. If we aren't thinking about how can we perform at our best, as part of that, that equation, then we might not even get to the long haul, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's really powerful that you kind of shared, giving your all and realizing that there was more in there than you originally were trying to save.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a really cool story. I bet there are many examples of that.
There's quite a few.
Oh my goodness. So did you see others, as you've had these moments where you've kind of learned these things about yourself, and obviously I think, in hockey you probably saw this as well, but have you been able to pull others along with you in these experiences that you've had, that you've seen maybe others are struggling in the same way?
I think everybody struggles in different areas, especially in the pipeline. You're learning a lot of different skill sets. You're working on a lot of different things. Cardio is a part of it. Strength is a part of it. Determination. I mean, and there's so much. I think you pick up some really good traits from others. Hey, I really like what you're doing, or how are you having such success, or how do you navigate this portion? I was always terrible in the water. Bad swimmer, horrible underwater. I think when I went through initial selection, somebody pulled me out of the pool after we did underwaters, which is you go down, do a completely underwater,
swim underwater
for the distance of the pool, and then come back up at a 45-degree angle. And I remember one of the cadre, he pulled me out of the pool and he said, you are terrible. Like I wanted to pass out watching you, and
you're like, thank you for that feedback.
And so it's getting with people who are really good at it,
right,
and getting advice. I think something throughout my career that I've been very blessed to have is really good mentorship, and you're typically not the first one to go through a process, find a new job, and having a good network of people who, hey, how did you prepare? What set you up for success? Or especially in business now, it's a completely new world for me, and having mentors who are able to help, hey, think of it this way, or there's a better way to orient or situate or prepare yourself. And that's really important, to surround yourself with people who, are able to elevate you, make you rethink kind of your approach to things, and then give you tips and advice.
So I have to ask, do you like the water today?
I like being on the water, on a boat, just hanging out.
There's some material between you and the water.
Exactly.
So that leads me to this question. I know that was a little comical, but I'm curious, when someone as that's, a developing leader, or wherever they're at in their leadership journey, if they really want to be part of something, but there is something that is fundamentally part of that they just don't like, or they're just not good at, what would be the advice you give them? Because, some people might be like, I just hate that so much, I won't pursue the thing that I love because that component's in there.
I think there's kind of two factors in that. If you hate something so much that in your heart that it's not something that you can overcome or you want to deal with on a day-to-day basis, then maybe that's not worth, getting through. But I would also argue that until you give yourself the opportunity to progress and grow and learn to get through whatever that difficulty or whatever that is that you don't like, you won't know. And I think there's a lot of ways to incrementally, you don't have to be the best swimmer today.
Right.
You just have to be a little bit better than you were yesterday. And I think that was something that we and our team learned throughout the pipeline is, hey, you don't have to be the best at everything today, but everything that you do today is just making you a little bit better for tomorrow. And so I think breaking down things into manageable and smaller bite-sized things that you can do. Hey, when I first started swimming, I couldn't believe people swam multiple laps at a time. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna swim 2 50s at a time tomorrow, and then next week I'm gonna build up to 100, or and it doesn't have to all happen overnight.
Right. For a moment, I thought 2 to 100, but you're talking 50s. Just well, that's fantastic, and thank you for sharing that, because I think what I also gleaned from that is there's some self-discovery that comes from that. I really don't like something. A part of you starts to learn, really, did I really not like that? Or I maybe feared that because I'm not good at that. And so I think I really appreciated your thoughts of you haven't really given your chance to truly assess that until you jump in.
And I think we build things up so much in our head. I think dive school is one of those, it's terrifying, and
I mean, it probably is. I'm not going to lie.
And it really wasn't. I think
Okay.
we, throughout training, did a good job. And preparation, again, you fall back on your preparation, worked really hard to get there,
Right.
put in the extra effort, and it just makes, those hurdles that at once seem like mountains, just small little hills that you have to go over. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you mentioned some of those in your life that you realize when you're going through something, you're probably not the first person that's gone through it. And you have that network of mentors. What are some of the traits that, and I think you allude to there are 5 traits in a leader that you really kind of look to, to see. What are those?
So drive, and a lot of people that we're surrounded with, especially at the academy or in, the soft community or in the military in general, have drive. And so that's not necessarily a unique characteristic, but it's something that you need in order to make you successful. Interpersonal effectiveness. And so how do I integrate with a team? How do I relate to others? And it can't be cookie cutter for everybody. And because team environments, people, are different. And it's one of those soft and fuzzy skills that you need to work on and develop. The way that you communicate. And so can I get my message across? Do people understand it? And that's both in writing, spoken, it could be nonverbal, verbal, the way that you carry yourself, body language, super important. Problem solving. So that's something that the academy does a good job of exposing you to routinely. Yes. Can I solve this problem? How do I get my team to, get after this complex problem? And so that's another one of those characteristics that we typically assess and select for. I think stress tolerance, Pipeline does a really good job of building you up with that. The academy basic training, all of that is just another iteration at how am I handling things when I'm getting yelled at, when there's a timeline, when there's, things at stake.
So I'm curious, were those, you've just over time recognized that when I see things or leaders succeeding really well or being able to accomplish things that maybe others would think impossible, they carry those traits? Is that how you have kind of derived them down to 5?
I think there's the foundation of it. Obviously, there's a lot of sub-facets that go into each of those traits and characteristics. And some leaders have, all 5 of them in spades. Some of them are much more heavily reliant on some of their characteristics than others. But it's always a good thing to develop the traits that you're lacking. I think feedback is a really important trait and really important characteristic of well-functioning teams. And so how did I do this week? If I didn't do great, I don't need to be beaten down about it, but people typically want to be high performers. And everybody has blind spots. And so being able to call out those blind spots in a healthy and functional manner is super important because people want to be high performers. And I had the privilege of running and getting to work some of our selection events. And what we found was a really cool trend, which is we used to do peer feedback. And so guys would show up to selection and right away the first day, you'd have a bunch of tasks and events and we'd bring everybody together and be like, all right, go down the row. Who was the 2 highest performing guys today? And that's really easy. People love to give praise. And then you go down the line and you're like, all right, call out the 2 lowest performing guys and tell them why. And people, I don't want to do that. And it's like, why? Like, do you not want them to get better? Do you not want them to have the opportunity? We're in day 1 of day X and it's not too early to turn their train around. What we saw is typically the guys who are the lowest performing early on are never the lowest performing at the end of the week. And they take that feedback, they internalize it, and they adopt and overcome that. And it's really fun to see that progression. But none of that happens if they don't get called out, if they don't get constructive feedback. Hey, when we were working as a team, you were doing X and Y, Z by yourself, or there's a million reasons why either an action is perceived as, hey, you weren't for the team, or you didn't perform to standard. I think people getting that feedback is what turns that train around.
Right. It's almost probably like exactly what they needed. So I'm curious because feedback is challenging. It's hard to, I think, for some to give feedback. It's hard for some to receive feedback. I'm fascinated because when I think about the pace in which you have had to operate and do things, that you make time for feedback. I'm curious if you could talk about how you guys do that in a way that it's received well.
I think it goes back to interpersonal effectiveness. And so you've got to know, who do I have on my team? Are they somebody who's going to internalize this or not take it very well? There's a bunch of different ways in which you can get feedback and then provide it to somebody. Where we used to, early on in the pipeline, as guys were learning to get feedback and, not, get too shaken up about it, is we would have guys write, all right, hey, everybody on our team, we're going to do 3 things they do well, 3 things you wish they'd improve on. And then we strip out the names and we provide just a list of, hey, here are your 3 things that you're doing really well. And then here are your 3 weaknesses that, everybody said. We go around, we talk about it. And that was a really good kind of introduction where it's not tagged to anybody.
Right.
And then what's really nice is you start to see trends. So it's really easy for people to be like, oh, Mitch doesn't like me, or that's Mitch's opinion. But when you start to see that correlation of, well, I got this 5 times, is, hey, my body language day to day is probably not where it needs to be. Or I'm constantly putting others down, or I'm just, not showing up on time, just small things. And I think drawing awareness to that and getting buy-in from guys to change it. And you see that transition all the time where, all right, like now I'm aware of it. I can fix it. I can identify it. And then you got the team to hold you accountable with it.
Well, and the way that you just described that, and I'm curious how often you think that it's, relevant or should be practiced. Is it like in the moment? Is it something like that where it's weekly? But I think what I think is really neat about that, it was never attacking, and it was never something they had to defend. It just seemed like it was just information, like, this is what you do really well. This is what you need to work on. And taking the attribution away from it, like the who said it, I think just made it,
And I think everybody's got to understand that you're a student, of life, and a student of your job. You're a student of life. You're a student of, whatever position you're in. And I had a mentor growing up and played professional sports. And there was a conversation where, hey, how do you know when it's time to retire? How do you know when you're done? And it's when I stop improving and I stop learning. And so having that mentality where no matter how long you've been around, there's things to improve upon, there's things to learn, is really hard to have, because people, you get comfortable in a position. It's like, I've seen it all, I've done it all, I've been there. But the people who are the best at their jobs, and especially in the military, are the people who show up every day, work on their trade, work on their skills, and seek to improve. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by some of the most decorated warriors that the Air Force has put out on the battlefield.
Yes.
And it's a humbling experience, but even more so humbling was the approach that they took every day, as they came into work every day and got better at something. They didn't sit on their laurels and, hey, I did this 2 years ago and now I can kind of walk through the rest of my career. They came in every day to work, and it was impressive.
Oh, man. What is something that, and normally I ask this at the end, but it just seems so fitting right now, like, how are you getting better and learning every day?
I think every day is new problem sets. And I think it's, trying to expand my education. I think there's a lot of new tools out there. There's a lot of new opportunities, and think the world's constantly changing. And so staying informed is one of the ways in which I'm trying to be a better leader. I think business is its completely new hurdle. I think being in the military, there's a very different type of leadership that you're able to bring. And two, everybody is there for the mission generally, and believes in the task and purpose. And business now, you kind of need to appeal to people in a lot more of a well-rounded manner. And so I think having conversations with mentors, I'm maintaining that. I try and just meet as many people as I can and glean information from them, experiences from them, because I'd like to think I'm getting smarter as I get older and not trying to learn all the lessons myself. So.
Yes. Well, I'm grateful for that, because the reason why we're talking here is because you answered, and we're willing to talk about it. So I think that's, just proof right there of that stretching and outreach. So before we shift into, because I'm curious on, you talked about, you asked your mentor, when does he know it's time to retire? I would love to ask you, when did you know it was time to go from active service into kind of the business world? But before that, I'd like to visit actually one of your experiences while you're in service. And, it's something there's a movie on it. We actually featured it in our 2018 checkpoints, but you were instrumental in rescuing the boys soccer team in Thailand when they had that huge monsoon. And I was wondering if you kind of take me, not so much, maybe you can share with others, in case they aren't familiar with it, but I'm really curious about the leadership piece of that, because it was a huge operation and it was dealing with water. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. My nightmare. But you know what? I just happened to be in the right time at the right place. There was a team of pararescuemen and combat controllers stationed out in Okinawa, Japan. There was a group of soccer players who got stranded in a cave after the monsoons came early and it flooded out a section. The Thai leadership and parks team, and then eventually the Thai Navy, tried to attempt a rescue, and they weren't able to action it. And so they reached out to the U.S. Embassy and asked if we had anybody in the region who could come help. Wow. And that just happened to be our team out in Okinawa. I think it was definitely a challenge. There wasn't a lot of information when we left out the door. It was, hey, there is 13 individuals stuck in a cave. We don't know what the hurdles are. We don't know what's been tried. We don't know anything. We don't even know if they're alive.
Oh my goodness.
And so getting on the ground, it was a lot of information to take in. There's a lot of people who were trying to help, trying to facilitate a rescue, working, their own agendas. And I think coordinating and making sense of all that chaos was kind of the first task.
And so what was your role? So, obviously the call came in, and then, your unit was assigned to that. What was your piece, and how did you navigate that chaos?
So I felt like I had the best job out of, anybody there. I got to be the operations officer. Okay. And so I was kind of the troop commander for the team that we had out. Mm-hmm. And, meanwhile, my leadership had to, liaise with the other leaders. I got to be kind of down and in focused. All right, what plans are we working? How are we coordinating and liaising with our Thai counterparts? And got to be a little bit more down and in. And so I really enjoyed that part. And that was kind of why I got into special operations in general, is I wanted to be, working with a team of really, really high functioning individuals on very hard problems.
Right. And this was one of the first kind of very hard problems that you were, working on.
It was. So this was my first operational mission, mm-hmm. coming out of the pipeline. I got stationed in Okinawa, and this was kind of the first opportunity to showcase what I had learned and employ. And it was kind of, everybody's dream is to go through training and then get to action some of those skills and traits that they've developed.
Right. Well, I imagine it was quite busy, around the clock, because, time wasn't on their side. And so you were really working against the clock. But I'm curious how you, how do you navigate with urgency as a leader, but still safety? How do you manage that?
I
balance, think looking at that maybe.
Sometimes you got to know when to kind of pull the reins, and it's very easy. It was a very urgent situation, yes. Right? There's 13 kids trapped. They don't have food or water. We don't know if they're alive. The cave is continually flooding more and more every hour. But you got to have a plan to go off of. You got to be able to not rush into an emergency and make things worse. And I think off the start, nobody was monitoring who came and went from the cave, and that generated issues. John and Rick, the UK and British divers, mm-hmm. stumbled on, two would-be rescuers who got subsequently stranded in another section of the cave, and they were able to get them out. And then, and so we realized that taking a step back, generating a plan. When we arrived, there was a key leaders contingent that went into the cave to kind of get information first and foremost. And then we spent the rest of the team, all right, download the gear, stage everything, prep everything, go get some rest, and then we're going to generate and come up with a plan in the morning. But sometimes you got to realize that you can't move a mountain overnight.
Yes.
And so you need to take time, do a little 5-minute huddle and make sure that you have a plan that's not going to get you further into trouble.
Yes. Well, it's such an important role. And I'm thinking about, those moments where you were like, get some rest. As the leader in this and, kind of organizing this, what are the thoughts going through in your head? And I ask that because I'm thinking about leaders who are experiencing something difficult for the first time, and maybe there's some doubt, or, how do you calm yourself through some of those questions you have?
I think for new leaders, especially, you don't have to have all the answers yourself. Right. And that is first and foremost. I on team am probably one of the most junior guys. Yes, I'm in charge as the officer, but the guys who are working with me have been in the Air Force, have done rescue missions, have been doing the job for 15, 18, upwards of 20 years. And so I think understanding that no matter where you're at in a team, you're a part of a team for a reason, and you should be able to leverage input, leverage ideas, and you shouldn't be beholden to coming up with everything on yourself. I think delegation is super important. I think getting input and opinions from others is extremely important, because sometimes the quietest guy in the room is going to have the best idea.
Yes.
And you need to enable and empower them to speak up, put them on the spot. Hey, what do you think? How do you think we should approach this? And then your job as a leader is to take all these good ideas, is to empower the team to do its best. And so your job isn't to carry the water, come up with a plan, and do everything on your own. Right. Like, you are there as a facilitator. And I think that is the biggest takeaway. Especially young cadets, please leverage, the experience that you're going to go out and be on team with.
Yes. I think that's fantastic advice. And as you look back on it today, I know we chatted a little bit earlier. I said, gosh, it's a while ago, but maybe it feels like yesterday. And you said, no, it feels like forever ago. Have you seen yourself, you learned from that, but have you grown in the way that you continue to do things now because of that experience?
I think everything is additive. I mean, that was a huge learning experience. Yes. I learned a ton. I think there are several things that, having a second shot at it, I would have done substantially different. I think the outcome ended up in a very, very happy manner.
Yes.
I think it's very easy now that we've developed this framework. Here's how we tackle this problem. But that's been applicable in other means and other avenues as well. Right, and so again, as you build your toolbox of experience, as you build kind of these traits and you get to refine that, it's something that you continually get to bring out in other manners. And so I grew a lot from the event, learned a lot, and have been able to apply it since.
Well, as I've been sitting across from you, one of the things that I'm just feeling in spades is that as a leader, you are somebody that's really humble, and you approach it like through humility. And so I'm curious, how you've seen that carry you, and what you might share with others when they're thinking about, how do I, as I'm leading, how do I lead? Like, how do I lead with humility? Because it seems like it's working very well for you.
I think it was easy to be humble when you're surrounded by the caliber of individuals that I was blessed to be around. I mean, every team I was on, there were phenomenal guys who have done phenomenal things in their career and were just so impressive. And so I was just always just thrilled to be a teammate of theirs. Mm-hmm. I think really going back to, again, your job as a leader is to facilitate the team, is to, drive you towards mission accomplishment. And I think if you always put things back onto why are we here, it's not for leadership's sake.
Yes.
Leaders don't exist, outside of facilitation. And it's not to downplay the job of the leader. It's not at all. It's a big responsibility. You have the authority, you have the, all of that. And so now it's your job to delegate that accordingly and efficiently. And I think it's going back to just understanding that, again, we exist for the mission.
Yes.
We exist to enable that team to accomplish whatever its task or business, directive is. And And so I think having an understanding of that, and then it's just fun to see people progress, right? You know, the cave rescue was my first mission, but that didn't mean because I hadn't had real world experience that I didn't have things that I could bring to the table. And I think it's understanding that as well as humility is important. Like maybe, you know, not jumping across the table and, you know, declaring yourself the king of whatever's going on, but individuals have a lot that they bring to the table, you know, having an ability to, you know, see other things that aren't being looked at, bring other perspectives to the table, even just making sense of the chaos, you know, and that's not something that you need to be a leader or in a leadership position to do. And being forward leaning enough to anticipate hurdles, second and third order effects, what else needs to be accomplished or taken care of. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which you can provide value.
Mitch, have you always kind of been this way? Have you always kind of operated in that space? Or is this something that you've kind of learned over time about yourself or taken on from others you've seen do it?
I think it's something that's developed, you know. I don't think, you know, I think there's a little bit of nurture and nature into it where, you know, you're born a certain orientation where it's like, hey, you're comfortable being, you know, in charge in groups, and some people aren't, and that's okay. But a lot of people develop into it. And I think I've just been blessed with a lot of opportunities to try things out, fail, come back to the drawing board, work on it, improve. And, you know, the pipeline was monumentally developmental for me. I'm sure there's a lot of teammates who, you know, will listen to this and laugh pretty hard about, you know, some of the stupid things that I did going through the pipeline, but they're learning experiences, and we had a really good group, and we pushed each other so hard. And so I had an assistant troop commander who was going through with me, and we had a really healthy camaraderie, but a really healthy, I mean, we were constantly competing, and it just drove me to be so much better.
Yes. So, you know, we were talking about how you are continually working on being better, right? Being better than you were yesterday, so that it's always kind of an additive improvement. I'm curious on when you've seen yourself fail. You talked about you failed and you've gotten better. Can you share an example of when you have failed and that literally shaped something very quickly, instead of being additive, but quickly, that you changed in the way that you operated?
I think just failures and taking care of people, I think, was one of the biggest things to learn is, you know, going through the pipeline, it's easy to, you know, lose sight of the overall end state. And at the end of the day, it's your goal is to be there to make people better incrementally every day. I think there's been a couple situations in which maybe I was a little lax on some enforcement of rules or standards that came back to kind of bite us a little bit, you know, and so, and this is probably, feel free to cut this, you know, but I think there was a opportunity, guys going through the pipeline, they're really young. I grew up, you know, in northern Minnesota, and you know, people drink underage. I was, hey, I'm okay hearing about it, or, you know, like I'm, you know, as a commander, it's like, if it happens, it happens, you know, but I think what's hard is, how do you enforce the rules if you're looking the other way, if you're not enforcing that standard? And so I think what's really hard is, you can be there, be one of the guys, but you got to set your red lines. You got to set, hey, here's what I will and will not tolerate. And so I think I learned early in the pipeline that if I'm okay, or if I let the standard slip on certain things, you know, let guys drink underage, let guys do, you know, stupid things, and then they get in trouble for it, how do I as a commander enforce it?
Right.
And so it was one of those learning experiences where going through the pipeline, guy had, got found drinking underage, and it's like, hey, it's on you as the, you know, officer to discipline. And it's like, well, I am also a part of the problem because I didn't set that standard. I, you know, allowed it. And so I think that was one of those heavy learning experiences where, you know, you're the quarterback of the team, but there has to be some delineation between, you know, between what you allow and what you can't.
I'm really glad you shared that, because I think that's real. I think that is a challenge that, especially when I think about the class of 26 that just graduated and they just are finishing their 60 days of leave and they're soon to head on to their bases, right? The world is their oyster now. And so how do they navigate some of those things that they're going to inevitably come across? And so I think that's a real conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
And I think what I started doing, from then on is you as a commander, you as a officer should have, your command guidance. It should be your checklist. Hey, here's what I value. Here's what my red lines are, and you gotta set the standard immediately.
Right.
To just let people know, hey, like here's what I'm gonna be irritated about if you show up late to meetings.
Mm-hmm.
If here's what I'm not gonna handle any moral, legal, or ethical issues. Like if it's not moral or legally or ethically a problem, like my job is to delegate that down to you and allow you guys to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so setting that standard early as a leader is extremely important, because then it allows you to uphold the standard and be like, hey, we talked about this. This is the expectation. You understood the expectation, and now I can hold you accountable. And it's not me coming after you because we sat down and had a conversation.
That's right. That's excellent advice. So one of the things that we like to do is ask you, if you were sitting across, and not Navir now, if you were sitting across young Mitch, what would be some advice you'd share with him?
I think enjoy the period in which you're in. Every stage, I feel like every 4 years I look back on the previous 4 years and just think about what an amazing time period that was. And getting to play hockey, going to the academy. The academy was amazing. You're hanging out with your friends. You're in college, and increasingly as you age, it's going to be increasing responsibility. There's going to be a lot more, burden on your shoulders, but it's fun,
Yes.
and progression is fun, moving on to the next stage. But I think enjoy where you're at in life a little bit more, would kind of be my advice. And then, I don't necessarily regret anything, but it's, continually to just work hard, progress, and have those cups of coffee, learn from other mentors, expand your network and just grow.
What are you doing now that helps you enjoy life?
I think right now, so just moved, and right now I'm trying to focus on a little bit more me, be a little healthier with sleep,
right,
eating, and just I think it's easy to kind of burn the candle at both ends, and now it's kind of taking a step back and understanding that you need to be rejuvenated. You need to, unplug periodically to be able to bring your all to, what you're working on. And sometimes things get monotonous, and sometimes, you just need to take a step back and reinvigorate yourself.
I love that. That's fantastic. So in today's terms, what are you most proud about yourself when it comes to, and if I word this right, maybe I say, what are you most proud about in being a facilitator? I want to say being a leader, but I wonder if you're going to answer with, I'm really good at facilitating high performing teams. I'm curious how you answer that.
I think what I'm most proud about is just looking back at the people I've had the blessing of coming across and just seeing them grow in their life, like I think we get lost sometimes in the military, where everybody's going to leave the military at some point, and that's okay.
Right.
I got friends who've stayed in for 20, 30 years and done phenomenal things. I've got friends who've gotten out and, progressed in their professional careers. And to me, it's just fun to see where everybody ends up. Like I love seeing people have success, and especially people who, I may or may not have helped at least a little bit, or, at least been a bad example of what not to do, but I think, it's the relationships that I look back on, and I'm just very, very happy to have, gotten to know the people that I've come across.
Well, you yourself made that transition, I think, from, active service and obviously an entrepreneur. What's some advice you might give someone in that kind of decision calculus of transitioning their career?
I think it just goes back to, again, am I continually, am I a student of the game? Am I showing up every day invigorated to learn, be better at my job? And, maybe if the answer is, if not, do you need to step away for a little bit, reinvigorate yourself, reprioritize your life? And sometimes it's just, hey, I've got some goals that I've set out to, get after.
Yes.
And sometimes your path diverges, and that's okay. And I think in my case, I had some things that I wanted to accomplish in life that it was just time for me to, change my path and course. And so I loved the military. Mm-hmm. I loved the team environment, the camaraderie, the units that I got to be a part of were phenomenal. Right. And I miss that every day.
Yes.
But sometimes you just got to, understand where you're going and set out and accomplish those goals.
Well, I think there's been a theme across many of the graduates I get to speak with, and service continues even out of uniform. So yeah. I think that definitely speaks volumes. So Mitch, was there anything today that we didn't cover that you would love to share with our graduate community, even if it's just words of encouragement?
No, I think it's just, continue to build your skill set, build your toolbox, mm-hmm. understand that every day is an opportunity to learn to better communicate, to invest in yourself, to professionalize, your approach to things, and building discipline, building, your approach to complex problems. And I think a lot of us just want to check the box and move on and get, but every day again is an opportunity to better yourself. And so I think that's what I would impart on, younger next generation who are going to solve tomorrow's hard problems, who are going to be in these complex positions that we can't even fathom.
Well, there are so many amazing things that we covered today that I think many can take back and internalize and find the ways that it connects to them. But some of the things that really stood out to me, just first and foremost with you, Mitch, is like you're so authentic and you just lead with your heart. And so I think that came out in spades. I loved learning that, leadership to you started with really kind of looking inward and what you really wanted, right? You could have gone a path of a pilot and you could have done well, but you recognize that there are some things that you wanted to do that might be more fulfilling with your skill set and align better with you. And I think that awareness as a leader is really important. I also really appreciate how you continue on focus on being better every day. And you don't have to be the best tomorrow, but you need to be better than you were, and you're competing against yourself every day while lifting others up. I think the other thing that I really just enjoyed about you is remembering that the leader, yes, does have responsibilities to make decisions and advocate and empower others, but you're a facilitator and making sure that you help others have their voices bring out the best so that you actually can bring out the mission to success. So it's been an incredible conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. So I just truly appreciate you being on Long Blue Leadership.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And be sure to share this with others, because the leadership journey is one that it never ends, right? We're always growing and evolving. And this conversation and all of our conversations on Long Blue Leadership with the lives of Air Force Academy graduates can just help you in your own personal journeys. We'll see you next time on Long Blue Leadership. I'm Navir Walkowitz, class of 99.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This Long Blue Leadership conversation was recorded on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. The Long Blue Leadership Podcast is a production of the Long Blue Line Podcast Network and presented by the U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation.